From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined, as always, with our super producer, Alexis, codename Doc Holliday Jackson. Most importantly, you are here, and that makes this stuff they don't want you to know. It's the top of the week, fellow conspiracy realist, which means that it's time for some strange news. And we have, as always, we've endeavored to give you a mix of things that you might not encounter. Certainly you won't encounter all of these in the same place. There are widespread protests, but not political protest. There is an update on several monoliths. You may know what we're talking about if you're a member of our Facebook page. Here's where it gets crazy. And there are, of course, more assassinations. One in particular that I think is going to be tremendously important in the coming months. But maybe we can ease into that one because it's a downer and it's prescient and it's terrifying. So where would you guys like to start today? I mean, we've been getting a ton of people writing to us about this monolith with updates on Here's Where It Gets Crazy.
I think that might be an easy one to start with. Let's just clear the air. Many of you will recall from, I believe, last week's episode, Matt brought the story before I really started seeing it pick up steam on social media, and now it's sort of become a meme, and then it's sort of taken on a life of its own. What am I talking about? Of course, I'm talking about the giant steel monolith-like structure that was discovered in a canyon in Moab, Utah. It really has taken on an internet life of its own. It's been memed up 6 Ways to Sunday. One of my favorites where someone just put the Toblerone logo on it because it really does kind of look like a giant space Toblerone. And there's another one that said the monolith has stories now, and it has the little circles like from the top of Instagram. Like, I think that's just like a meme format, like the whatever has stories now. But yeah, hope to see more of that. But in, more recent monolith news, unmeme related, apparently the thing is gone.
Yeah.
It's just gone. Yeah.
It had a quick reign.
It vanished as quickly as it appeared. And there's a couple of sources on this. Only one have I found that has some specifics from a local who they interviewed who claims to have seen it picked up and taken away in a truck. And then the words "bye b***" were scrawled on the ground with like tire tracks and a urine stain.
Oh, it was Aaron Paul.
Yeah, definitely was. Yeah. What's the deal with that, by the way? Who did he knock out that also got memed like crazy? He was in he was the second event, like the opening act for the Mike Tyson fight. And
no, you're talking about the other Logan Paul. I was talking about Aaron Paul. Because
does he pee on things?
No, because he's so famous for saying things like calling people on that show.
Science.
Okay.
It's just catchphrase. Got it. Probably his most famous line from Breaking
Sorry,
Bad.
didn't mean to.
Fair enough. Sorry, I'm getting my Pauls confused, but that's another story that's been all over the meme pages. But yeah, so okay, again, this is according to the Daily Mail. So take this with a grain of salt because it is the only place that I'm seeing this account. But there's a gentleman by the name of Ricardo Marino who is apparently the one who discovered this late Friday. He said he found the pillar was gone and it was replaced with "bye in the dirt and tire tracks and a pee-pee stain. And he said on the way to the site, he passed a truck hauling a large object that he believed to be the monolith. The Utah Bureau of Land Management, who obviously manages the land that this structure was found on, said in a statement Saturday that the pillar was removed by a unknown party. Of course, there's been much ado made about this monolith. It certainly gets our brains thinking in the direction of science fiction, like Arthur C. Clarke's 2001: A Space Odyssey. More specifically, the Stanley Kubrick film version, which has, it's more of an obsidian-colored monolith at the end. That's at the beginning, but it also sort of like the through line for the whole film, and it represents this idea of alien presence. And there's certainly some non-ironic discussion around that being this. I think we pretty quickly decided it was probably more like an art installation, and there was even an artist that had a very similar looking work to this piece. But this has neither been confirmed nor denied. All we know is that it showed up, and now it's gone. And then in other monolith-related news, another monolith has now been discovered in Romania. Just this week, a mysterious monolith appears in Romania. A little different in texture, but very similar to the one that appeared in Utah, and no one really can explain it. It's about 13 feet tall and was first noticed on Bac Domine Hill in Pietra Neamt, Neamt in Romania. Forgive my butchering of that pronunciation. But the Neamt culture and heritage official by the name of Roscana Hozanu said, quote, "We have started looking into the strange appearance of the monolith. It is on private property, but we still don't know who the monolith's owner is yet. It is in a protected area on an archaeological site." And it says, before installing something there, they needed permission from our institution, one that must be approved by the Ministry of Culture. Clearly that did not happen. And it's a little more, it's like a triangular wedge kind of shaped, very tall, protrusion, a lot like one of the pillars of the Georgia Guidestone, which this is being compared to in a lot of circles. And it's only meters away from the city's oldest historical monument, something called the Petrodava Dacian Fortress, which faces something called the Holy Mountain, or Mount Kialu. Again, sorry for the butchery, but geez, guys, we're up to our ears in monoliths here. I mean, it's a sign of the times, a clever performance artist. I sent this to our group text thread, and Ben said he thought it was very smart of the artist to pick it up like that. And I meant to respond, or the aliens. But I mean, what do you think, Ben? You clearly seem to have an opinion about where this is coming from.
Two things. It's highly likely, or it's plausible at least, that this was stolen, the monolith in Utah, because it blew up virally in a remote area. And the only report we have is the one eyewitness saying they saw a truck, and then, of course, humans leaving trash when they took the thing because they ruin everything. That's like humanity in a nutshell. So how would it work if it were stolen? Well, it's really tough for the artist to get any recompense, the very human artist, I'm convinced. Because imagine if you're a private collector and you have this in your home, you can just say it's a replica or something different. And there's not really, the artist could try a civil suit, but then they would also be identifying themselves, which apparently they didn't want to do just yet. So I don't know if the actual artist took it. I think it's more likely that somebody in the area just decided to take it on a lark. It's possible. I don't have proof, but I have prejudice against humans, I guess, is the best way to say that. And then there's another point with the Romanian one. The reports are that the Romanian one is a copycat. It's inferior in quality. It may be, and we're just reading tea leaves here, or we're just reading monolith script, but it may be that the entire point of the exercise was to have people copy this in other parts of the world, similar to the Toynbee tiles. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
I very much do know what you mean, Ben. And I do think that if it were extraterrestrials, probably pretty unlikely that they would be quoting a YouTuber back at us when they, beamed it back up and urinating on the site and leaving tire tracks just to throw us off. If this was like their big, grand gesture of, reconnecting or connecting with humanity, that seems pretty unlikely. Or at the very least, pretty sophomoric. I don't want to hang out with those aliens. They seem like pretty poor sports.
I don't know, man. It's like, I think about this all the time. There was a great listener mail we got too about how we remove our anthrocentric presumptions and framing when we think about non-human intelligence or life. Culturally, if aliens had something that we could call a culture, then for all we know, the deposit of urine may be a tremendously culturally significant, nice thing, you know? Maybe they're a species that communicates entirely through distribution of fluids, which is wild. But we should also hasten to point out that the urine is probably human too, right? Did they prove that? Did they have like
I mean, you could easily
pee guy come in?
Yeah, you could extract urine from any bystanding humanoid that was around, right? I mean, it's pretty easy. Abduct a humanoid, take the contents of the bladder out, save it, deposit it down to, to frame up some human. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got it.
I'm completely joking, but yeah, we're having some fun with this. I think last time we talked about John McCracken, right?
We sure did.
The artist from
That's
New
correct.
Mexico who died in 2011.
Yeah,
he passed away in 2011.
Literally just pulling up an article from the Times that has some very interesting speculation around this, because some folks have actually weighed in associated with the artist.
Oh, what are they thinking? Because it feels similar to him, but I would just make the point that any artist that is working with metal could have created that thing.
This is entirely true.
Very true.
But the David Zwirner Gallery, which we mentioned in the last episode, who's exhibited McCracken's work since the 90s and represents his estate, they have weighed in and said that the monolith is indeed a bona fide piece of McCracken's work. And this is an authority on this gentleman's work, so they would be able to sniff out a phony, even I'm sure, it's minimal. It's about as minimal as it comes. But I would argue if anyone was going to be able to like point it out, and be that definitive about it, they probably have a good reason. Here's the thing though. If he did do it, he died, like you said, in 2011. He apparently never mentioned it to any of his friends or the dealer. And so it's become a big discussion in the art world. And the artist's son, who is living, Patrick McCracken, he is kind of expressed like total bewilderment over the whole thing. And it hasn't really weighed in one way or the other. There's a quote from him in this Times piece where he says, of a memory with his father when he was still living, we were standing outside looking at the stars, and he said something to the effect of that he would like to leave his artwork in remote places to be discovered later.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
In a phone interview. And then they asked him, do you think he was joking? And he said, no, I thought it was something that he would do. He was inspired by the idea of alien visitors leaving objects that resembled his work or that his work resembled. This discovery of a monolith piece, that's very much in line with his artistic vision.
See, wow. I read that same piece, and I believe it's New York Times piece, the one you're talking about, came out a couple days, like about 3 days ago. I believe in that same piece, a spokesperson from the David Zwirner Gallery said, no, in an interview with Art News, a spokesperson said that they don't think it's a work by John McCracken, but maybe by a fellow artist paying homage to him.
Well, that definitely conflicts with what's in the Times piece that came out, you're right, the 27th, today being the 30th. The representative of the Zwirner Gallery did say that they felt it was a bona fide piece of his work. So maybe there's some conflicts there, or some not quite getting the story straight between the two pieces. But either way, to me, this memory that the son is talking about is pretty powerful. And again, he doesn't go as far as to say, yes, it was definitely him, but he talks to the Times about this this conversation he had with his dad and the whole idea of alien life and all of that. I think it's pretty compelling.
When did McCracken pass away again?
2011.
That's right.
2011. I think it's a really cool testament. I hope it was McCracken. And, without going into the idea of what happens after life, it would be neat to think that the artist is somehow cognizant of this and able to witness this discovery. Super cool. I think it's something everybody should do. Leave behind an unexplained legacy. You know what I mean? It's the artistic version of planting a tree whose shade you will never sit beneath.
Right.
There you go. Yeah. I really quickly before we move on, had you guys ever heard of this other monolith in Seattle? They called it the Millennium Monolith.
Oh no.
There's a place called Magnuson Park, Magnuson Park, in Seattle, Washington, here in the United States. And on the 1st of January, 2001, this 3 feet wide, 9 feet tall monolith appeared in this park out of nowhere. And it only lasted until the 3rd of January 2001 when it was removed and a single red rose was placed down into the concrete area where it was attached. It was a single red rose that was snapped in half, just sitting there after a couple days. Interesting symbolism there, maybe.
That's powerful.
Yeah. Someone's got a great collection at their house.
Oh, totally. And no one weighing in yet on the Romanian monolith. I've seen a Twitter post with an actual photo of it, and it really does look like the same deal. It's triangular, very shiny, a little more textured, but fascinated to see where this goes. Alien life or no, it's definitely its own kind of interesting conspiracy. It's sort of a nice one, I would say. I kind of like it.
Maybe the aliens are trying to tell us that they're from Uranus.
Codename Doc Holliday, I think you have solved the case. Hopefully that is how we learn about alien life. Hopefully there are extraterrestrials. They live in our solar system. They communicate through urine. Yeah.
And they watch Breaking Bad.
They clearly do.
Urine finds a way.
Always. Well, on that uplifting note, let's take a quick sponsor break and then come back with a little more strange news.
And we are back. Well, everyone, as we're recording this, it is the 30th of November, which means we're right in that sweet spot of everybody rushing around to get the best deals on all the things that they feel they want to or have to buy for other people for the holidays coming up very soon in a little less than a month. And, you know, we've got all kinds of fun names for all of the sales that occur now. The most famous one that just became a phenomena of, you know, mostly people getting run over or punched or beaten up while they attempt to get the best deals, Black Friday. But there are all kinds of other ones. What is it? Is it Prime Day? I think Amazon's big one was Prime Day.
Well, there's like Cyber Monday. Yeah. And just really quickly to your point, Matt, and maybe this is a dumb question, but I never really thought that deep into it. Black Friday is specifically a reference to how hellish the day is, right? Like that is the idea, that it's like a miserable day.
No, it's a reference to historically brick and mortar department stores going from the red ink or in debt to going to black ink.
See, I thought that was an option as well, but I just want to make sure I'm on the same page, because when I conjure that, I think of like Black Sabbath or some kind of like demonic thing happening.
Or like Black Monday when the stock market crashed. It's weird to me that a Black Friday is good, but a Black Monday is terrible.
Also, I mean, Mondays, you know, they're the worst. But no matter what you call it, it's when a company, everything from a Macy's to a Target, some outlet goes on this big sale in order to get a bunch of stuff out the door for the holidays, because that is, you know, as consumers, that is when we spend a lot of our money. It's around the holiday times and towards the end of the year. So this year, just like last year, and this is a big thing to remember, this year, just like last year, Amazon workers are striking, and this is something that it's been ramping up really over the, you know, as long as Amazon has become this titan within the shipping and online ordering, all the commerce that they do, as they've been getting more and more popular, you know, and there are more and more workers, and there's more pressure on this company to, you know, pay better wages, to give better health care or benefits or any at all. It's just all kind of compounding as it goes on, and as the company makes more and more money. And this year, my goodness, with all of the quarantine efforts and other safety measures that are in place, you and I and everybody else have been ordering a ton of stuff. And because Amazon is the biggest player currently for any of that stuff, a ton of us are buying on Amazon. And I believe I've got all this stuff here. We can talk about it as we go through this. But this year, in a lot of countries, not in a lot of states here in the U.S., in a lot of countries across the world, workers at Amazon are striking, and they're specifically coordinating around this past weekend, this past Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And my goodness, it is a really complex thing to think about if you look at all the pieces and what it actually means and the effects that it could have on the global economy in time. But it also is really simple when you think about what Amazon can do now because it is so big. You know, we talk about companies that reach this thing too big to fail. We like this new thing that we've coined over the past decade or so, a little over a decade. They are at that level, and humanity is at the level where so many of us need jobs. So let's jump into this, and I'm going to read parts of an Independent article from The Independent. Title is Amazon Black Friday Strikes and Protests Coordinated Around the World. 15 countries are carrying out strikes and protests on Black Friday this past week, and they are calling for increased pay and improved working conditions. Now, remember, there is a pandemic still active globally. So working in any kind of space, even if it's a giant warehouse or something, you have to be very careful about who you're close to and wearing some kind of personal protection and, always sanitizing. There's so many things that you have to worry about as an individual worker that also a giant company has to worry about providing things for their employees.
Should worry about.
They should.
I'll go with should worry about.
You're right. You're absolutely right. This movement, this whole protest thing, just to jump forward a little bit, it's called #MakeAmazonPay. And here are the countries: Australia, Bangladesh, Belgium, Brazil, France, Germany, India, Italy, Luxembourg, Mexico, Poland, the Philippines, Spain, the UK, and the US. The largest of these protests is occurring in Germany. There are around 3,000 workers across 6 different facilities that are protesting or have been protesting. And they are working directly with a trade union that is attempting to again get better wages for those workers. And they make a really interesting case here. Jeff Bezos, the head of Amazon, he has become the first human in history to amass $200 billion in personal wealth because of COVID, really. And because he had built this giant corporation prior to any of the COVID stuff going down. I believe it's $70 billion of that wealth has come specifically because of quarantine and COVID restrictions and everything. $70 billion in personal wealth.
Wow. I mean, imagine the add-on effect there too, because one thing a lot of people don't know is historically, even though it kind of started as an online book distributor, Amazon makes a lot of its money off of its web services. And so those
cloud storage and things like that, right?
Right, exactly. So those companies experiencing increased online traffic are also using the web service more. So Amazon is making money even when you don't buy from Amazon, because you might be buying from a business that uses Amazon web services.
And you could argue, well, he was, okay, COVID aside, prescient. Like, he laid the groundwork and the infrastructure for this massive empire. Shouldn't he deserve to benefit in this way? I don't know. I mean, it's just a hypothetical, I guess, right? Should there be statutes of limitations on like how much personal wealth an individual like this can amass? I don't know. Isn't that called something other than capitalism? You know,
right? Well, unfettered capitalism is a beast that eats itself. It depends on continual expansion into new areas of exploitation. And I know exploitation's a loaded word. I'm not saying it with a bad connotation, but that's what it is, right? You transform labor into other things of value. I do want to correct, though, there are going to be a lot of our fellow conspiracy realists who argue that, yeah, Jeff Bezos, he's got a lot of scratch, but is he Mansa Musa level? Like Mansa Musa right now, it's really tricky to calculate the net worth of this ruler born in 1280, but I think he peaked around 400 billion today. So Jeff, if you're listening, you still got a ways to go, man. But you're closer than anyone else ever got so far, except for maybe Vladimir Putin. But that's a different. Yeah, we have a whole different story about that.
He's not on conquering warlord king level yet. But
Amazon makes their net worth now, the company overall, is $1.7 trillion. That's larger than the GDP of Russia, and that's pretty much neck and neck with the GDP of Canada. So if Amazon were a country, economically, it would be in very close to being in the top 10.
Yes. And here is our point. The whole reason we're even talking about Jeff Bezos' personal wealth here and how much the company is making, the whole idea is that the company itself is making just hand over fist money. They can't put it away fast enough. There's not enough space to fit all this money in. Even if it's a digital bank account, it's just, there's too many zeros. So that being over here, they hire thousands and thousands and thousands of human beings who do actual labor. And if you look to what Amazon says about that labor, well, let's get a specific statement from a spokesperson. Here it is. Amazon has a strong track record of supporting our people, our customers, and our communities, including providing safe working conditions and leading $15 minimum wage and great benefits, leading on climate change with a climate change commitment to be net zero carbon by 2040, and paying more than $5 billion in taxes globally. So essentially, look, we are paying our people pretty well. $15 minimum wage is not nothing. No, I mean, that's pretty great.
We've all heard the horror stories about what it's like working in those warehouses, though.
Yes, we've all heard the horror stories. We are aware of how tough it can be to maintain a job in this one specific place if you're working for an Amazon warehouse. The other thing is, at least the thought is, with the growth of Amazon overall and all of the shipping and all this money come in, couldn't there be a little more equitable growth for employees at that even base level, right?
Profit sharing or something.
Mm-hmm. Something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, that's a very hopeful thing. That could be a very positive thing, right? If we are truly going to allow all ships to rise, as the monolithic company, the monolith that is Amazon rises, that would be great. Historically, that is not what happens, at least regularly, that is not what happens. According to Forbes, Amazon recently has been offering full-time employees a $300 bonus check. Part-time workers will be offered a $150 bonus check, and they're offering up to $3,000 in bonuses just for people to work over this Black Friday and then through the holidays period, which again is not nothing, but compared to the money that's coming in overall, it's very, very little. But it's also great. I don't know. It's a really tough thing. I think it's just something worth talking about. The concept is that there are all of these protesting workers who, they're going to disrupt everything for a bit, and they have. It's shown in Germany specifically that there were shipments that were being fulfilled in, I think, Croatia and a couple other somewhat nearby countries. The places in Germany where the shipping facilities where there were protests happening, all of that stuff got rerouted. But it was pretty, I don't know how difficult it was for Amazon overall, but it was rerouted successfully. And it did slow down shipping a bit. But it's not the kind of thing that will put a big enough dent in a giant company like that to actually make big, significant changes. Mm-hmm. And the other thing to keep in mind is everybody, like we said at the top, everybody needs a job right now. And Amazon is actually offering a pretty good wage for even really difficult work. And so then it's on an individual level, you balance, is it worth my sweat and possibly tears to actually, provide for myself and or my family?
I don't think you should get dinged for taking a restroom break. I mean, call me if that all of a sudden makes me somehow Karl Marx, then so be it. But there's some interesting arguments here, Matt. So first off, Amazon is a private entity. It is at the threshold of economic heft where it can function in some ways like a state power. We've seen this before, get the advantages of being a state without the obligations that a state should have to its citizens, right? You don't have citizens, you have customers and employees. But the issue here, because it's a private entity, the bare bones argument is Amazon should pay what it's legally required to pay, and anything else it does is its unusual own extra credit, right? It speaks to its character. But there's another issue, which is that the workplace injuries are pretty crazy. The degradations are pretty crazy. And there is a good argument to be made that Amazon is functioning either as a predatory entity swimming in the wake of economic disaster, or as some sort of beacon, a safe haven for people who would not otherwise survive. I mean, we talked about this a little bit off air, but I think a lot of folks don't know about Camper Force.
That is something I'd never heard of until you brought it up, Ben. Please tell us about it.
It's disturbing. So it occurs in this context. The thing is, what Amazon is saying is very nice. It is misleading, but it is technically true. The misleading part of this is that this statement is very nice and positive if we think it occurs in a vacuum. Very few things occur in a vacuum. People in previous generations were alive for the era of pensions. The pension is this thing that seems insane now. You would have a career, you'd work for a company. At the end of your career, they would continue to pay you because you had a pension.
But you pay into that system, though.
That you paid into, yes. So somewhere along the way, before the four of us were probably born, the pension quietly gave way to something called the 401k. The 401k takes the risk of retirement from the employer and puts it squarely on the employee. And it was sold to people as this it was sold the same way that, God, I'm just dropping heat on some brand names here, but it was sold to people the same way like Comcast tried to sell some of their terrible internet throttling plans, right? Right. They said, we're giving you more choice. We're giving you, now you are the captain of your fate. But you're not really. You're the person who has to bear another cost that historically your employer was bearing.
Not only that, the choice in and of itself is complicated and confusing for a novice. Even when you're served up with all these options of what you can invest in for a 401k, it's it can be very perplexing to someone who isn't familiar with stock trade in any way. And then all of a sudden, you have to take it to your financial advisor? Whereas,
financial advisor? What the hell is that?
I don't have one either. I'm basically joking. But
I have a guy outside my local bar
who I just kind of shout at. Exactly. But then you're right, Ben. It is an investment. It is a risk that you are bearing. And sure, matching is all good and that sounds great. But the pension was like unemployment. You pay into it, you get it. No questions asked.
Right. And pensions are earned. We should say that. They're not some kind of gift. But the reason I'm saying this up, and I don't mean to be long-winded here, is that in a very real sense, free market arguments aside, which I do respect, right? It is a private company. A private company has the right, and shareholders would argue the obligation, to pay as little as it legally needs to. You know what I mean? Anything the employees will agree to. The free market solution to underpayment for employees is go work somewhere else and the company will realize they have to raise their rates. Unfortunately, that also mainly works in a theoretical vacuum. Regardless of your views, the economic reality of the situation is that after a series of crashes in the 90s, in the early 2000s, particularly in 2008, a ton of people were abandoned by the American dream. And so now we see Amazon in the scene. They had a problem in the mid-2000s. they were always, like you said, Matt, they were scrambling to find temporary workers during all the shopping periods leading up to Christmas. And in some places, it was so tough for them to get temporary labor that they started bussing in people from 3 to 5 hours away. And then a staffing agency said, hey, a lot of elderly people who thought they would be able to retire and live in their homes have had to drastically readapt. And a lot of elderly people are living hand to mouth, driving in RVs. Maybe it's because they want to, but many times it's because the housing crash left them adrift and they have no other recourse. Very few people want to be, just by the way, very few people look at their early 70s and think, I can't wait to pick up my warehouse job. And thus, Camping Force was born. RVers are working at warehouses in Campbellsville, Kentucky, parts of Nevada, and they follow the Amazon warehouse money. They follow the work. So it's getting sticky, you know what I mean, when we get to that kind of thing, because we're not saying Amazon is evil, but there's so many factors that come into play here. Of course you're going to protest. People forget. If you're against unions, don't forget that the United States is founded on protest. In part, that is like the DNA. And this idea of people protesting for better workers' rights, it's a huge part of U.S. history.
Yeah, but while, it is obviously your right, is it not also your employer's right to terminate you for striking or for trying to organize a union? Or, we've heard situations where trying to quote unquote collude, I guess, with fellow employees to start a union is grounds for termination in certain situations. Yeah,
I guess. I mean, it depends on the laws of the land and the country where you're in when it comes to that kind of thing. What actions you can take as a company to prevent your workers from organizing. And to that point, I'm going to send everybody over to vice.com to read this article. Secret Amazon reports expose the company's surveillance of labor and environmental groups. Mm-hmm. Now, it's written by Lauren Kaori Gurley, and you need to read this because it was put out this year, this November, and it is speaking to reports from 2019 when there were widespread protests occurring at Amazon and all over the place. You're talking about garment workers who are producing things for Amazon, other places, manufacturing jobs that are making the things that Amazon sells, to the actual, workforce doing the shipping, the entire thing. There were huge protests, and there were lots and lots of attempts to organize workers into unions. And again, we're talking on a country-by-country basis, sometimes a state-by-state basis. And Amazon was doing a ton of surveillance internally just to see who's talking to who about what. We're talking about all kinds of surveillance too. Anyway, it's worth a read. Check that out, and you can see how a giant company like Amazon, which, by the way, I got those numbers wrong. I was saying tens of thousands of people employed. That is so wrong, and I apologize. According to Forbes, this sounds insane to me, but maybe it's true. According to Forbes, Amazon, over the course of 10 months, that's from January essentially until October, or maybe it's February to November, they hired 427,300 employees, new employees. And that's globally. So all the countries where they operate. That means they have a global workforce of over 1.2 million human beings. With that many people employed, you can imagine how it matters how much you pay your employees on both sides, right? To both to the employer and to the employee.
Yeah, it does. But I would also argue like their delivery vehicles are BMWs or Mercedes rather, like that's a choice. I mean, I don't know. Is it a flex? Like, are they just really efficient? But I've always found that to be interesting, that the Amazon delivery vans are Mercedes Benzes.
I didn't even know that.
9.6 serious injuries per 100 full-time workers in 2018.
Really?
This per The Atlantic. So doing math is not working out in the favor there. I would also ask, Matt, I think the biggest badger in the bag here is what came of the protest?
Oh, as of right now, I'm not seeing any news, or at least recent news over the past 24 hours saying, hey, great job, everybody. Protests have changed everything. I'm not seeing anything to that end. Do you have the latest news? I checked right before this.
I haven't seen anything other than, at least from Amazon's side, I haven't seen anything other than that official response that you saw from the PR unit, which is, this is how much we pay them. This is what we're doing for climate change. And we're going net carbon. What's clever about that is that it's a pivot, isn't it, from some of the issues the organizers raised. Though, to be completely fair, the organizers of the protests did call for the company to commit to zero emissions by 2030. So it was a part of the conversation. Just seems like they're giving themselves a pat on the back for something that they were already doing, rather than giving people a slightly better working situation.
Mm-hmm.
I know Amazon there's a big advertising campaign going on right now, or a promotional campaign, I guess, from them, talking about all of the school grant, or the school. They're funding a lot of kids, giving scholarships. Oh man, what is it? I just saw it. I happen to be watching Top Chef again for my own sanity, because for some reason it gives me happy feelings.
You ever tried Great British Bake Off, man? I think you'd like that one too. It's another good happy feelings show. Yeah.
I have. Unfortunately, I'm addicted to the judges and everything.
Oh, I feel you. They're fabulous. Are you talking about the Amazon Future Engineer Scholarship Program?
Maybe they put some big thing up where it's like $500 million or $500,000 or whatever. It was some insane number of how much money they're putting towards students, which is great. But it was this weird flex again, like you're talking about with the Mercedes. Like, okay, that's great.
Well, and it's good for optics. It's a nice PR campaign, but it's like, is it moving the needle? And is it like, when you look at it on a chart of their holdings, it's like nothing, it's like a blip.
So I would like to, with stuff like this, I think they could get politicized very quickly. So I think quantitative data is the best lens through which to view this. Here is something true. Based on the profits you just disclosed earlier in this segment, Matt, about Jeff Bezos and the profits this single person has made, one thing I think that escapes a lot of people is just how vast a gulf there is between $1 million and $1 billion. To put it in perspective, Jeff Bezos could pay every single employee about $105,000 as a one-time bonus and still be as wealthy as he was when the pandemic began.
Does that work out? 70 billion for 1.2 million? Whoa.
But again, like should I mean, you're right about
should he have to?
Should he have to? And
right.
I think the answer unequivocally is no. But it's when you start getting into these levels, these heights of wealth that are just unfathomable, that, like, to your point, it's like becomes like an economy of scale in one company and this whole too big to fail, argument. Is that good for things? Is that good for the world? Or is it like scary? Especially when it's a company that makes literal robots that could, then like take over or something. I'm joking, but I'm also not joking. Look at the portfolio of what Amazon owns. They own, Amazon Robotics, Kiva Systems, all of this stuff. They have, like, it's basically they have their own skunk works. They're this economy of scale that is developing technology that is meant to serve them. And are they required to be ethical with that? I'm sure their standards and practices or their whatever, company handbook says they are. That's their mission statement. But, when you get to that level, are you really beholden to anybody?
It's a pickle. It's a prime pickle.
No.
See, because the issue is that humanity has been in the midst of similar dilemmas before, but not at this scale. The last time the U.S. encountered something like this, it led to trust busting, which is not it's so weird that we can look back in history And we see these people lauded as heroes for doing what later historians recognize as the ethical thing for the species. But we have to remember that in their time, those people who are lionized now were treated as public enemy number one. I mean, that's just the reality of this stuff. As far as Jeff and Amazon, it's very tough to start your own business, and this has been a very successful one. So there's also a question of, are we punishing the honor student here? Are we punishing success, which is something that, you probably shouldn't do in general, all things being equal. But yeah, I'm interested to hear. I know that we've got some folks in the audience today who have worked or are working for Amazon. I would love to hear some stories, and tell me a little bit more about the terminology. I heard the phrase Amazombie, referring to the people who had to work the really late shifts at the warehouses, which operate 24/7, from what I understand.
That's right. And we certainly hope that you got your $15 turkey voucher if you are, in fact, working for Amazon and you got to use it.
Is that a thing?
All right. Yeah. All right. Well, we have to do our, big company thing and go to an ad break, but we'll be right back.
We have to give our 2 coins to the ferryman to get us across.
Throw them in the wishing well.
Just put them right here. All right. Well, we'll be right back.
And we have returned. Cry havoc. Let loose the dogs of war. We're close to a very unpleasant thing. If you are, whether or not you are based in the U.S. and listening to this show on a regular basis, fellow conspiracy realists, you are probably aware that there is a little bit of a political disagreement in this country. This is not really going to be a story about politics, but it does come into play. So one of the big issues in this recent presidential election in the United States is that the sitting president, Donald Trump, has refused so far, as we record this on November 30th, to concede the results of the election and is arguing a couple of different things, trying to find a couple of different ways to argue that the election itself is corrupt, right? Mm-hmm. And that's allegations of corruption and election rigging come up every time that there's a presidential election in the U.S. It's a great news story. No, every single time.
Right, but to this degree of publicness about it and not willing to concede, this is definitely new to me.
This is unprecedented. Yeah. You mean on the president's side? Yeah.
Yes, and on the party of the president, and just of the level of legitimacy that this is being given by the fact that it's being parroted by so many people in power.
So the reason I'm bringing this up is because when a president here loses an election, they don't automatically leave the White House. They still have to do stuff. Being president is a difficult job. They enter into what is sometimes referred to as a lame duck presidency because everybody knows, enemies and allies, foreign and domestic, know that one way or another, somebody is going to replace this person on January 20th, right? So it makes it weird. It's a weird time to get things done. And now we are in a lame duck period. That's not a ding on anyone. That's just the name that is used. And things are starting to happen on the international sphere that should be pretty concerning because we're actually in a dangerous time for the U.S. experiment and for the world. Just a few days ago, a man that most people in the West have never heard of, named Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, was assassinated. Assassinations happen all the time. Check out our earlier 2-part episode on this. They happen because they work. They're very effective and they're very unethical. But this guy is someone that you will be hearing more about because he was a nuclear scientist for Iran. And the Alphabet Boys have they have lists of these kind of things, not just the U.S. crews, but all the other Western intelligence agencies. They have a list of people they consider important. And Mulsanne was one of those people. He was murdered on the 27th of November. So just 3 days before we recorded this, he was traveling on a rural road in Absard, which is a city near Tehran. And his bodyguards weren't just like sitting in the Nissan with him. He had a convoy of 3 armored vehicles. People knew that he was a target, that he had a target on his back. So it looks like a truck carrying explosives detonated near his car, and then gunmen, unidentified officially at this point, and I know what everybody's going to say, but so far they're officially unidentified. These gunmen emerged and they just started raining fire down on this guy's car. His bodyguards clashed with the assassins. 3 of them were killed. Others were wounded. Several of the attackers were reportedly killed as well. His family members were killed or injured in the attack. It was a very nasty, nasty thing. Something else happened here. First off, there is no official word on who did this, but several days beforehand, a certain U.S. president who was looking for, according to some inside sources, looking for an external event, maybe a tail that could wag the dog, had asked again about taking action on Iran. By taking action, we mean unilaterally bombing suspected nuclear sites. Mm-hmm. Which is a lot like saying, hey, that campfire would look a lot cooler if we just sprayed gas on it, right? That would be a heartwarming thing. So the current guesses are that, well, when I say current guesses, the Iranian foreign ministers have said that they believe Israel was behind this. And you have to ask yourself about timing. Why would they, if it is Mossad or if it is, Israeli-linked intelligence, why would they wait till now to assassinate this person? Does it have anything to do with the incoming Biden administration that has already sent signals saying that it wishes to renew the Iranian nuclear agreement? Is someone trying to poison the well or lower the chances of there being a successful agreement? Because think about it, if you're Iran. One of your top generals got assassinated. There was no real legal repercussion for the assassin. And now it's happened again. Will there be legal repercussion? What does this mean for the future of nuclear stability in the Middle East? I know this is not as fun as some of the other stories. Like, oh God, European Space Agency has a space claw. They're really putting that into space. But this is important.
No, this is really important. Remember we did an episode on who's killing Iran's nuclear scientists? I think that was early.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was happening in like 2010, 2011, around that time when major scientists working in Iran's nuclear program were being murdered, like assassinated. For it to be happening again, because I think there's been some stuff occurring, some aggressions happening in Iran for a while now. And it's interesting to then, as you're saying, Ben, kind of putting some of these pieces together, figure out which part is actually the thing motivating everything.
There's an article in the AP Iran newspaper, strike Haifa if Israel killed scientists. So Israel being obviously, a huge ally of us. And then this notion that Trump was even talking about bombing Iran's nuclear facility right before he leaves office. The idea maybe being just to throw a wrench in the works for Biden, I guess. I don't know. Is it deeper than that?
Yeah. So as I had mentioned, they had about 2 weeks before the assassination on November 27th, Trump had done what I just called kind of a potential tail wagging the dog scenario, because he said, why don't we strike at the main nuclear site? As far as the calculus behind that, who knows? Is it because wartime presidents never tend to get reelected? I mean, that's just a fact. Is it because he feels the election is still undecided? A lot of international commentators are going to say that if Israel did this, if they were responsible for it, then they would not have done this without at least a tacit approval from the U.S., which I think is pretty likely. Also consider that back in 2018, Fakhrizadeh was mentioned explicitly by Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu. He not only mentioned the guy and said that he was a leader in the nuclear program of Iran, but he told people watching, he was like, remember that name. It's going to come up later. So he's definitely on a list. But if they're like, if I had to guess, and this is just speculation, if it were U.S.-Israeli operatives who did this with a remote-controlled machine gun, by the way, that detail came out. If they were doing this, it was to ruin the deal.
Right. Yeah, that was what I was thinking might be the case. And what if Iran does get to the bottom of this and decide this is what happened, and they do strike the Israeli city of Haifa, killing large numbers of civilians? Wouldn't that force us to respond?
Yes. And Matt, we'll go back to the machine gun in a sec. I just want to say also consider the open secret policy of Israel in the Middle East regarding nuclear weapons. It is very, very bad. The last thing you want is any kind of nuclear deployment. And then also consider, the millions of innocent people in both countries who, would like to stay alive, which I don't think is an unreasonable desire. You know what I mean? So this is an enormous powder keg. This kind of chaos can be advantageous or beneficial for like the defense industry, but it can be very, very bad for human beings. Again, most of whom in both countries just want to like get up and go to work and, maybe take a nice vacation with their kids sometime if they can save up enough money. Add to this the fact that Iranian contacts, a lot of people there are suffering tremendously under sanctions. Sanctions are collective punishment. You know what I mean? They punish the people. There's an argument that they punish the people who don't make policy decisions more than they punish the elites who do. But anyway, yeah, Matt, it is correct that it was, the latest reports are a remote controlled machine gun.
Yeah, but the New
they were
York Times
watching Breaking Bad too, huh?
Well,
yeah, good point.
There you go. But it's weird because we are getting conflicting accounts from Iranian sources that the New York Times was citing to Haaretz, and a couple other outlets that are citing a different thing, because some are saying that it was a Nissan that was parked far away that had an automated machine gun on it that was firing and caused the attack, and then that car itself exploded, and there were no actual assassins on site, which is really strange to think about as a possibility. Others are saying there were 12 individuals at least that were present who were attacking, and then they all escaped without getting caught. Either way, it's almost like this phantom attack, or it feels like a phantom assassination. Very, very strange.
Yeah, and this is the scary thing too, is for people who are completely uninvolved in this, you have to wonder what is the escalation going to be? Because if there were an invasion of any sort, God forbid, if there were what we call a hot war, then the U.S. inevitably becomes part of the conversation. And I hope this doesn't happen. I hope that I hope the forces at play can step back any bellicose behavior. But we have to remember, this is 2020. It's always something. That's the motto of this year, 2020. It's always something.
Always something.
And so I hope a war is not the grand finale. I would really like it to be something a little more laid back. But we want to hear what you think. We've gone a little over here. I'll have more updates on this as it develops. But in the meantime, thank you to everyone who's checking out the show, who's sending us these strange stories. Let us know what you think of outsider art and monoliths. Let us know what you think about the dilemma of Amazon. Let us know what you think about the dilemma of nuclear weaponry in general. Should it be banned? Totally. Will it be banned? Never. Never, never, never. It's going to be here forever until we're back to sticks and stones and just wondering why that mysterious pile of rocks at the far edge of the field makes people sick.
Yeah, well, it could go away when the next most powerful type of weapon is developed, and then everybody's trying to make that instead.
Yes, the gravity gun or whatever it ends up being. That's true. Also, maybe it'll go away when the whatever comes after humans takes this stage. I read this cool study that says if it weren't for that asteroid, dinosaurs would have soldiered on. Like they weren't on the decline. They would have been fine. Isn't that crazy? On these accidents, such large things hinge.
Accidents such as stumbling upon our Instagram, which is at Conspiracy Stuff Show.
Well, that's a happy accident, though. I'm cool with that.
Well, it could be an accident.
A hapsident.
Or finding us on Twitter or Facebook, where we are Conspiracy Stuff. And we also recommend that you check out our Facebook group, which is Here's Where It Gets Crazy. You can hang out with all of our friends there who've already joined up. We like to talk about this episode, the past episode, that other one that you really like. Just jump on there, and there are others who want to talk about it. We guarantee it.
It's a one-stop shop for all your monolith updates.
There you go. All you have to do to join is name one of us or a super producer, anybody, or make us laugh enough to click on the approve button. Yep. That's really all you got to do.
Sometimes if they're real cute and there's literally no indication they know a damn thing about the show, I'll still let them in. I'm like,
because we want you in the club.
We want you in the club, and maybe you'll discover, a life-changing group of people, because that is exactly what the Here's Where It Gets Crazy folks are.
And I screenshot the really funny ones. Yep, so please, hashtag no pun left behind. Quick word while we're on that point. We've got a backlog of approved posts. We have mods who work very hard, but we're open to some more mods for assistance. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm often buried in research, so it's tough for me to go through and approve things.
It's tough, and also it's no ding on any of the members that we have an approval process for the posts. It's just mainly to keep them from being too redundant, and also just to make sure it's a nice, safe space for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the opposite of safe spaces, if you want to check us out on YouTube, visit youtube.com/conspiracy stuff. We have some surprises on the way for you. If that doesn't quite do it for you, if you're like, here we go again, whenever you hear about social media or YouTube, then we've got another way for you to contact us. You can just give us a call. We have a number and everything. It's legit AF.
It's 1-833-STDWYTK. Leave a message at the sound of Ben's dulcet tones and try to keep it within the 3-minute range or shorter, and then you might appear on one of our weekly listener mail episodes. Just let us know if it's okay to use your name or how you'd like us to refer to you, or if you want to be anonymous. We're cool with all of that.
100%. And if you're not cool with any of that, then you can always reach us the good old-fashioned way. Send us an email. We are
conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.